Hola, welcome. This is Dean Ardelano. All right, we're getting into something which I feel is very exciting here. It has to do with the coming earth changes, what is taking place, what many of us now are beginning to tune into through our intuition that gives us a sense of some of the best directions that we can take in some of the changes that are coming about. Would you like to be able to think more clearly? Clearly in the sense where your emotions were not all tied up as to, should I do this, should I do this, can I go over here, maybe what's going to happen with the economy? Now, let's use the economy as an example. When our emotions are all tied up into fear about the economy, we cannot think what? Responsibly. We cannot think critically. We cannot take the kinds of actions that would save our butt in a drowning economy. How's that? That's very simple, isn't it? In other words, the more clearly that you and I can think, that we can perceive reality, the greater the clarity of our actions, the greater capacity that we have in order to be able to take what? Positive action. Positive action means actions that work toward our well-being. All right, let's take a look, though, first at the learning process and how we learned. If you look at religious learning, and this is a good one, but this really works through all the stratas of our learning methods, that most of our learning has been a process of what? Indoctrination. Indoctrination works like this, doesn't it? It says, this is what you should believe. That when you die, this is what happens. If you commit a crime, this is what's going to happen after death. And so on. In other words, you were indoctrinated. You were not given the chance to question. You were not given the opportunity to look at other possibilities of belief or ideas. You were indoctrinated with a particular way of thinking. What indoctrination causes is a freeze-up of the emotions. In other words, when the emotions are frozen into a particular stream of reference, into a particular way of what? Acting, then we are unable to act critically. We are unable to act in a way that works best for where we are trying to move ourselves within this structure of what we call reality. I was in the military. Military is a tremendous amount of what? Indoctrination. But because soldiers are not supposed to think, soldiers are not supposed to question, soldiers are not supposed to have their own mind, right? That is a tremendous limitation on that, because they are what? Supposed to take orders without question. Can you imagine what happened to a lot of soldiers in Vietnam, and no doubt has happened to a lot of them in Iraq and Afghanistan, when they begin to perceive that much of what they're seeing isn't quite right, that there's something wrong here, that killing people indiscriminately maybe is not really in our best interest or in my personal best interest. In other words, when those questions come up, what happens within us when we have been through processes of indoctrination? It what? Limits our thinking process. Now, sometimes people do break through it, fortunately. If you look at the education in the school system, a large part of it is an indoctrination. There is a tremendous lack of truth in the learning process. Are we truthful in that sense on our history of how the United States eliminated multi-millions of Native Americans in order to get the land and do what we did? Of course not. That's not talked about, because without truth, we are blind to how we have gotten ourselves into the particular state of affairs that we are in at this point in time. That should be obvious. This is a great symbol in that sense, and we've all seen it many times. You know, the devil's on one shoulder and the angel's on the right, and we're thinking, oh, wow, you know, we're 13 or 14 or 15 years old, and we have all these sexual desires and feelings, and, but I really want to, but it's a sin, but, no, yeah, but God, it feels so good, but, I know it's wrong, and so on, without learning in an intelligent way. In other words, without the process of indoctrination, we would what? Have the capacity to think more clearly. In other words, we are not taught intelligently for the most part, because, and sex is probably a good one to use in that sense, because of our fear of, you know, our male child getting, you know, having babies, and our girlfriend or our girl child getting pregnant and so on, we created systems of what? Indoctrination, which are a basis of fear in order to what? Control that individual's actions. That process of controlling individual actions through fear eliminates that possibility of intelligence. Now, if we feel that we're not very intelligent, if we feel that we came from a place of, how would I say, stupid natives that are not very bright or not very intelligent, etc., so on, then we might believe that we need to what? Be indoctrinated and controlled. In fact, if you look at it, that's where those ideas come from. Right? We were literally afraid in that sense of our own human nature. And because we are afraid or have been afraid of our human nature, we have tried to put as much controls on it as possible. If you take a look at how we treat the earth, we try to what? Control it. We try to control the rain. We seed the skies. We try to control the forest. And because of it now, we have massive fires all over the planet, don't we? Yes, exactly. Because we are in such control, because of our fear of nature, we are way what? Out of control. So it is very important in that sense, because of the coming earth changes, the changes that are coming about both within ourselves and within nature itself, to what? Heal our emotions. In other words, literally to heal, to release, to let go of that simple term, what we call dysfunctional beliefs. Think of it as a computer, and I think this is a great analogy, it really is. Computer works fine. Brand new. But you put in all kinds of software that has a virus within it. The computer's great. There's nothing wrong with human beings, in other words. The human being is a great structure. It's highly intelligent, but if you put within it structures, downloads of information that are viral, okay, in that sense, that have a virus, that are dysfunctional, it will not be able to act, respond within nature as it needs to. So healing your emotions should be, I believe, a primary process of your own movement in life. In other words, beginning to eliminate those belief structures that are dysfunctional. First, it starts off with questioning. You know, where did I get this information? Why do I believe it? Why do I think it's true? Like so many people are hung up on Republican and Democrat, and they believe that this is the way, that's the way, so on. Oftentimes not really perceiving that Republican and Democrat really aren't that much different. That they're both controlled by what? Industry. And because they're both controlled by industry, they may wear a different face, show a different form of clothing and expression, but really they're working for the same person, industry. I love this story. It's a great story that was told to me by a friend of mine, and he said he had a friend of his, and this friend of his, if he lost a job, he would simply recreate himself. He would recreate himself in such a way that he would go out and get another job, even though it might have been in a completely different industry. If he was in a business, and he said he was in businesses, and they fell apart, he would recreate something entirely different and move into it. And his friends said that the reason he could do that is because he had maximum flexibility. So they coined him, or they gave him the nickname, Max Flex. Without getting too deep into the story, I sat through a hurricane as a very young boy, about 15 or 16 years of age, and I watched a giant oak tree fall apart right in front of me. It was right across the street in the park. It split in two and fell over as the eye of the hurricane passed through, and it started on the other side. The other side fell over. And this was a massive, huge, brute force, strong tree that I, as a 15-year-old, could walk on the branches. It was so big and strong. But it fell over in that hurricane. It did not have much flex. Not too far, I noticed there was a tree that had lost all of its leaves. And it was pretty thin. It really didn't have much of a trunk. But I watched it in the hurricane bend over sometimes so far in those big ripping winds, sometimes up to 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, almost touched the ground. But when the hurricane was over, it was still standing. You see, if you and I begin to undo the limiting beliefs that we have, which cause what? Lack of flexibility, cause a freeze-up in the mind-body system, cause a freeze-up in our thinking process, we begin to have maximum flexibility. You can call yourself Max Flex, because flexibility is often way more important than what? Brute strength. Staying awake in the coming changes. What do I mean by the coming changes? Well, we know that there's massive changes happening. I told people at least 2 years prior to 2008 that this system of money, this system of finance, this system of what we call our economy was going to fall apart. That was obvious. Now, that didn't really take rocket science on my part or anybody else who was saying maybe some of the same thing. Very simple. If you look at your own life, and if you were functioning in the same way as the U.S. government or governments and banking systems around the world, you knew that your personal finances were going to what? Fall apart. That was, we have a system, very simply, without getting into a lot of detail, that is based on what? Consumption. In other words, if we don't continually consume, the system does not work. Well, the fact of nature is, and the way that nature works, we can only consume so much without allowing it to constantly replace itself. That's why that many people, of course, are talking about energies which are what? Well, we are not consuming the earth, where they are replacing themselves. They are replaceable in that sense. Positive versus negatives. Let's use magnets as a good example. And as a kid, you probably played with magnets. I did. Little bar magnets. They were fun. And if you brought the two north poles together, you remember they pushed themselves apart. But if you reversed one of them and turned it around, and you brought that south pole toward the north pole of the magnet, they what? They came together. Why is that? Very simple, because the energy is moving in the same direction. If the energy is moving against each other, it pushes them apart. If the energy is moving in the same direction, we begin to move with it. They come together. If you and I, as individuals, because we are magnetic human beings, we are magnetic in structure, we are magnetic in our auric field, in our energy field, if we as human beings begin to flow in the direction of nature, okay, which is the natural process of where energy moves, we now can begin to move in a way that the changes that are coming about, we will be able to live with, so to speak. We will be able to work with. Positive and negative thinking. I remember back in the 60s, 70s, Norman Vincent Peale, and people got so very powerfully into positive thinking, that they weren't going to think negative. Negative thinking was bad. Negative thinking was wrong, so on. Here's a very simple story. If someone goes to a MD, they get the test and they discover that they have a dread disease that maybe they could die from, many people might think that as a negative. Actually, it's incredibly positive, because now the individual knows the problem. Now the individual has the capacity to what? Make decisions on what they can do about it. Make decisions on how they can bring about a healing. In other words, it is absolutely necessary for us as human beings, in our process of self-healing, in our process of eliminating, letting go of dysfunctional systems, to be able to accept, to look at, and be aware of the negative without rejecting it. In other words, we can look at the problem. We can say, here's what we're doing to our environment with coal. Here's what we're doing to our environment with the oil, and digging in the Antarctic, and digging in the oil fields of Alaska, and so on. Here's what we are doing as we disrupt the ecosystem in the Gulf of Mexico. What can we do? What is the positive actions that we can take to change it? Now, if we are expecting the oil companies to do it, if we're expecting industry to do it, if we are expecting, in that sense, the government to do it, it is probably not going to happen for many reasons, which we're not going to get into here. But you and I, as personal individuals, can begin to take different actions. Not only can we take different actions because now our minds are freer to think, to act, to think more critically, we can also not support those people, those industries, those people in government that do not work in accord of what is best for our personal well-being. Now let's touch on that. What is best for our personal well-being? What is best for our personal well-being is best for the animals, is best for all of nature, is best for all people combined within this nature structure reality that we call planet Earth. A reality and a money system that is based on consumption is not best for everyone concerned. It has never been best for everyone concerned. It has always been best for those, quote, on the top. So we need to put money what? In its proper place. Money is a necessary process in the way that we structure, in the way that we have evolved in what we're doing here. In fact, it's way better than barter. It's way better than barter because with this piece of paper, I can exchange it for peas, corn, carrots, houses, wood, work, industry, whatever. Okay? But if I barter, now I am incredibly limited as to what I might be able to get or bring into my household that I need at any particular period of time. Money has never been the problem. The problem is how we perceive it. In other words, if our dysfunctional attitudes and beliefs and emotions are hooked to money, is that it's going to make us happy, that money is going to give us personal power, if money is going to give us self-esteem. I like that. How much are you worth? Because as I grew up, and it's still true today, how much are you worth really is a basis of self-esteem. And let me tell you, if our self-esteem is based on money, we are continually being shortchanged. I remember the first time that I went broke. I went bankrupt in the 60s. I had 5 businesses at the time. And I remember I felt so devastated that I couldn't go into the restaurants. I couldn't face people that I knew because I felt that I was what? Worthless. Because my self-esteem and self-worth was based on what? Money. It was based on things. It was based on stuff. Now today, if I were to go broke, and in fact, not too long ago, when I say, some time ago, but I went broke again in business, so to speak, and in what I was doing. Did it devastate me? Almost not at all. A little twinge maybe, but it did not even have close to the effect of what it had back in the 60s. Because my self-esteem and self-worth is not based on what? Money. So take the time to heal that process. Take the time to heal that which is within you about money. I am the master of money. Money is not the master of me. When we are hooked into money emotionally, we are its servant, not money ours. Money is supposed to be our servant, not the reverse. We are not in control of nature. Wow. I mean, I was brought up with the idea that I was superior to nature. I mean, that's what the religions said. That's what people said. We believed that our technology and so on and all of that would always be able to rule and control nature. We are learning different very rapidly and very quickly. You see, we're like people who are hitting ourselves in the thumb with a hammer and screaming for healing. We have all of this money that we collect for varying kinds of diseases that are going on in our world while we're throwing all kinds of poisons out and creating them. Now, someone looking in from the outside would say, wow, these people are really fucking stupid. Well, it's not so much that we're stupid. It is more that we have been what? Conditioned. If you look back during the time, and this is very recent, right, when they were going through the whole process of changing the healthcare system, and they were having these meetings all over the country, and some people were screaming, this is communism, this is socialism. Guaranteed, less than 1% of the people who were screaming, who are not willing to communicate, who are not willing to listen, who are not willing to be part of the solution, were screaming about something that they absolutely knew nothing about. The average person in the United States knows zippity-doo-dah about communism or socialism. And I'm not trying to sell either one, so don't misunderstand me. My point is because we have been so conditioned with fear about those two concepts, we are unable to think when those attitudes and those words come up. It's another area of our lives that we need to take a look at, that we should be aware of, so that we are no longer, in that sense, controlled by information coming over the propaganda highway of CNN and all these kinds of systems. We are not in control of nature. The tsunami should have told us that. Okay, I'm hopefully that in your own mind it has. But if we move in the direction with nature, now we can begin to see our own arrogance. We can see how that arrogance has brought us to the point of where we are. The condition of the world, the condition of nature, the condition of what is taking place is a condition of our what? Personal and collective beliefs. The healing power of earth. Now let me say this because I was brought up to fear the earth. I was brought up to fear nature. I was brought up to believe, in that sense, to varying degrees, that nature was against you. Nature is not against us. Nature is not out to get us, okay? Nature does what it does in order to what? Preserve itself, to preserve the planet, to preserve the earth, to bring about a constant well-being of the earth. Think of it in this way, that when a flower blooms and it opens up into the world, as a tree breaks the ground and its branches begin to come up, do you believe that its thought is of dying? Or is its natural movement toward health, prosperity, well-being, growth, and so on? The answer, of course, is yes. That's what it naturally does. I can remember being in Hong Kong, being on a concrete sidewalk in the middle of multi-millions of people, and here was this tree that had broken up through the concrete and was moving constantly toward life. we are in the same sense the same. That's what I meant with the magnets. When we align ourselves to the natural process of nature, to the natural process of earth, when we begin to move in the direction, we begin to move in the direction of the natural healing process of life. Not only is the earth healing itself, but we are healing ourselves within it. That is the natural flow of energy to move, and I love the Taoist term really, which is called Wu Wei, to move in that natural flow of life. Intuitive optimism. What is intuitive optimism? Intuition is when we are connected to nature. Much of our intuitive process comes out of nature. I don't know if you remember the story, but there was a particular island there in amongst the off the coast of Indonesia. When the tsunami came, the shaman there took all the people to high ground before it came. Why? Because he intuitively was able to sense its coming. When you or I begin to eliminate the dysfunctions, the beliefs, the attitudes, and so on that we have gleaned, that we have taken in, that we have been indoctrinated with, right, that has caused our emotions to be all tied up in consumption and so many other things, we lose our natural intuitive process. When we begin to relax, we begin to meditate, we begin to do yoga, we begin to do Tai Chi, we begin to do body work, we begin to do all of these things, we again open up into that intuitive process, which gives us a natural sense of the direction in which it is best to go. So where do you want to be in these coming changes? Because these changes are happening. They're happening economically. They're happening environmentally. They're happening, and they are coming fast. All right, thanks very much for being with me. I appreciate it. If you go to my website, which is called coolzenhealing.com, and take a look at the book, Discover the Magic in You, you will discover this has many, many means, ways, methods, and so much more than what we've talked about today to begin to undo so that you begin to open up to that natural healing process within you, that you begin to eliminate those structures and beliefs that are causing you and I to not have what we call emotional intelligence. Thanks for being with me. This is Dino Delano. And please, leave a comment if you've liked this.